welcome to Leveling Up the Podcast with Alethia Tucker. I'm so happy that you're listening today. My goal is to bring something new, something promising. I plan to bring conversation, resources, and wisdom around the things that are holding us back from going for our best. We'll talk about everyday life and careers. I'll bring us dialogue designed to dig deep and identify our passions. We'll talk about the limits that you need to let go of and the promise that you need to grab a hold of. I'll interview women who bring valuable insight to the table. We'll have opportunities for Q&A, and we'll talk resources to help along the way. There are levels to this. We all have dreams, and now is our time to level up. Hello, and welcome to the second season of Leveling Up the Podcast with Alethia Tucker. I am so happy to be starting this second season. I've really missed doing the podcast. More importantly, I've missed connecting with people. A huge part of leveling up the podcast is all about sharing your journey and enabling and helping and empowering other women as you share your experiences and they go through similar things. I often say I'm an open book. And if I've gone through it, or if someone who has touched my life has gone through it, there's a very good chance that you're going to hear about it here on the podcast, because that's what it's all about. It's all about strengthening one another. So we're doing things a little differently this time. I'm coming live first. So we're doing one part of the podcast live, and the second part we'll do recorded, and it will stream across all, or it will be available on all of the podcast levels, or all of the levels where you access, your podcast. So this week we're going live, and next weekend you'll be able to hear the continuation of our podcast from today. So there are two parts to this, and we'll do the first part right now. And I'm very excited. As you can see, I have a guest with me today. We have Kayla Tucker, who's the owner of Kayla Elease Coaching Services, LLC, a company that helps women in educational leadership to effectively manage stress, prioritize health and their well-being, and lead for the long haul. As a school psychologist by trade with years of experience in the online wellness space, Kayla is an expert on stress management for school leaders, using a unique framework that is founded in resilience, biology, and humanistic and behavioral psychology. She helps women in principalship learn how to bounce back from day-to-day demands with ease while keeping personal sustainability at the forefront. We'll tell you a little later how to connect with her, but first of all, join me in welcoming Kayla Elease. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Well, you know a little about Leveling Up the Podcast, and you have actually, I know that we've talked about it, and you've heard some of our past forecasts or our past broadcasts.
Yes.
Forecast. And so you know that we're all about helping women, and you have definitely honed down on a specific niche, a niche that it's obvious that is a very high stress environment. So it's definitely one where having someone to be able to hone in and to be able to give some actionable tips that they can follow and some techniques that they can follow to manage stress is important. However, today, we all deal with stress. Again, you've honed in on a specific niche. However, I know that your skill really help people deal with stress no matter no matter the career. So that's why I wanted to bring you on today as we start our inaugural podcast for the second season. And me, as well as a number of like many other women out there, we all deal with stress and we're all trying to figure out how to handle it so that we can be our best selves. Stress, people talk about it frequently, and I bet 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, have felt stress at some point.
Mhm.
So it really does weigh heavily and play a huge role in how you deal with everyday life and in your health and in your mental space. So I want us to be able to talk to women today. And I hear that there may be some men out there listening to us also, but talk to us about some basic techniques for handling stress so that when we're done here today in our small frame of time, people will be able to walk away and use some of these tips and techniques to make themselves better and to be in a healthier frame of mind and healthier physically. So, first of all, let's start with this. Tell me a little about yourself. How did you get interested in stress management? This is a part of the journey share that we include in every podcast that I do. It has to touch on a journey, and I know you have one to share as well.
Yeah, so I definitely never really sought out this path or entrepreneurship in general. It's kind of just something that kind of fell into my lap as a result of some personal experience. So, very early on in my education career, I was doing what I call school psychology light. As you mentioned, I am a school psychologist now. At the time, I was doing what I call school psychology light, a lot of education research. Pretty similar to what I do now in my actual role. But I was working at a variety of different school sites on a few different projects. So I was very good at what I did, and that's how I ended up on multiple projects. I initially took the job for one particular project. Um, they saw that I was good at what I did, and they needed help on some
Mhm.
other projects. So then I started to get pulled to other projects, and the stress of it all just really became very overwhelming. At one point, one of the projects, my commute from home to there was anywhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours one way. So if you just think about the toll that being in that kind of bumper to bumper traffic can take on you on a regular basis, and to think that I was spending somewhere between 15 and 25 hours a week in my car just trying to get to work, it really started to affect not only my health but also my outlook on my career. I really felt like I was doing what I was called to do, but I did not want to have to sacrifice self to be able to do that work. And long story short, when I brought some of these concerns to the attention of the powers that be, there were a lot of things that were said, most of which I don't remember. But the one thing that really stuck with me was that this is just what you do. And I feel like in that moment, I came to the realization that one, this was how other people were operating. Generally speaking, in education, the nobility of the job is touted as enough, and that's usually not the case. But people feel like, you chose this career of service, you're working in education, you know what you signed up for, this comes with the territory. Kind of that's the mentality. So I came to the realization that lots of other people were operating, maybe not in the exact same way that I was in terms of the specifics of the circumstance, but in general, definitely putting service first and themselves second. And then the second realization that I came to was that I was expected to buy into that. It's what I call the
Mhm.
martyr mentality, in terms of
Mhm.
how educators are socialized to believe that the best way to serve is to put the children first, put students first, put your job first, being that we work in a helping profession and then you come second. And I did not want to buy into that. I was actually ready to quit my job. I had gone on other interviews looking kind of either to stay in education but work in a more clerical role, or to leave education altogether, because I really felt like my only options were to either do what everybody else was doing or leave.
Wow.
And long story short, I came to the realization that I did not have to leave. I had control over how I operated in my role. And even if that meant that I was going against the status quo or not operating under some of the culture codes of education that were detrimental, but that most people still decided to follow anyway. I didn't have to do that, and I could stay in my role and continue to work in education without doing those things. So from that experience, I really honed in on what I knew and used that to my advantage. I was very accustomed in my role to using what I knew to support students, but I also thought about the fact that we're human beings just like they are. So there are some things that I have learned about how to support them that I could also use to support myself. At the time, I only had my bachelor's degree. So I used what I knew in terms of psychology. That's what my bachelor's degree is in, as well as human development, which is what my minor was in undergrad, and really kind of started to apply some of the things that I knew to myself in terms of how I was processing emotions, how I was prioritizing my well-being, and how I really wanted to foster my own resilience in my role to be able to bounce back from the demands, because the reality is that the field is very demanding. The work is very stressful, very meaningful, but very stressful. So I knew that in order to stay in the role, I had to make some changes. So long story short, I made these changes. In hindsight, I was able to look back and kind of put the ducks in a row in terms of exactly what I did to get to the point where I am now. And that became the framework that I use for clients. And I just saw lots of people who were struggling the same way that I was, but didn't know that there was a different way to do things, and that there was a solution to this particular problem. So that is the very long story of how I ended up here. That's the journey.
Wow. Wow. And quite a journey. And I mean, so much of what you just said, I know we all feel it. When you said that's just what we do, for so many people, we're just expected to just kind of suck it up. It's stress, it's a part of the job. But all the while, it's affecting us at so many places, in so many touch points. It affects, it has a slow effect sometimes on our physical health. We feel that we're strong and we can do this and we can take this and we can run, and do 50 jobs and keep up with everything else outside of work. And it starts to take a toll on us slowly. And I'm speaking from experience here.
Mm-hmm.
Your body starts to crumble on you slowly. It may be, starting with headaches, and then, it can go further into fogginess, mental problems, focusing, just focus issues, because you've got so much that you're trying to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole, that's just what we do seems to be the mantra, particularly, in the workplace, and unfortunately sometimes with managers.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for, sharing with us how you got there, and the fact that, you took this on from personal experience, and the fact that you knew that there were others out there who definitely needed this help. So I know you have a psychology background, and forgive me if I missed it. So how did you get into the whole wellness piece? What training have you done? What experiences have you had around that?
Yeah. So initially, it took me a little while to really get to the specific client that I serve now, which is primarily school principals or school leaders. Prior to this, I was in the wellness, still am in the wellness space, technically, just blogging. So I actually started a blog in 2017 that was really focused on a lot of different things: hair, beauty, and wellness. And then eventually I kind of condensed or minimized some of those things and focused primarily on wellness, because that was something that I was very passionate about for myself, and also about sharing information for other people. So that's kind of my online wellness space experience, going from blogging online and sharing things on social media to pretty much doing the same thing now, but specifically for my business. And then in terms of my training, I do have a certification as an integrative health coach. So that training is actually focused, well, it has a mental health focus. So it is a general health coach certification, but everything is framed from the reference of the mind being the starting point for everything, and
Mhm.
how our mindsets and our mental health can impact those other areas of our physical bodies and our health. So that's my background in terms of the wellness piece of things.
Great. Wow. And that's an awesome mesh of the two. I definitely see how one can complement the other and
Hmm.
really bring forth, all the pieces that need to be put together with this. So before you came today, I reached out to my audience, as well as did some emails to find out if there were some questions that women had in particular. But again, we know that this goes across, women, men, children. It touches
Right.
our lives, no matter who and what. However, I did focus in on the women. And of course, a lot of the scenarios that I got were from women who have been dealing with this pandemic. We're coming out of it now, but that wasn't always the case. And many of us are still damaged
Hmm.
from the whole mental and physical piece of doing life totally different than we had ever done it before, seeing things we have never seen before.
Yeah.
And so I have a couple of scenarios that I want to give. I'll put on your coach or stress management hat and tell us, give us some ideas for how we would be able to handle some of these situations. So the first one that came to me, and forgive me because, of course, now that I'm trying to pull it up, okay, here we go. Um, we have a mother who is stressed. She has noticed chest aches in the morning, and worsening throughout the day. So, what would you tell her right away? I mean, the first thing that kind of jumped out to me was the whole chest ache thing. I mean, outside of, okay, first of all, going to see a medical professional, because if you're having chest aches, this could be an emergency. It could be any number of things.
Hmm.
But if this is at this point, let's say at this point, a non emergency type situation, what are some suggestions you can give for handling something like this? This is a mom who has been working at home, who has been working at home and also homeschooling. Well, doing school, I guess, because the kids were home for a while. She is married, and the husband is outside of the home. I mean,
Hmm.
works outside of the home. And so she has had the stress, I guess, of trying to manage the home, work from home, and try to take care of homeschooling and all of the things around that. So, what tips would you give this mom who obviously, needs some help?
Hmm. Yeah, so it definitely sounds like she's got a lot going on. Unfortunately, I can't say that it sounds particularly unique, especially
Mm,
like you said a couple minutes ago, in terms of what people are going through in the pandemic. And I would even venture to say women specifically. In what I have seen, the mothers are the ones who are typically the ones staying home and homeschooling, or prior to when some districts went back to face-to-face learning, it did kind of fall on the shoulders of moms. So the first thing I just want to say, just to answer the question in a full way, is to really understand how stress can show up. Even though the chest aches are the only physical symptom that she's experiencing, I think people often think that physical symptoms must only be related to some kind of physical ailment, and that is not always the case. Stress is far more powerful than I think a lot of people know. So the
Mm-hmm.
first thing that I would say would be to for her to really pay attention to those chest aches and also kind of take inventory of any other physical symptoms that she may be experiencing. And she may actually need to do that like deliberately, like either through a journal or jotting down a quick note on in her phone when she experiences certain things, because it's very easy not to notice them or not to track them. But I say that because a lot of people look at some of the physical symptoms that they experience in isolation, which makes it really difficult to see that stress is the actual problem. And to your point, sometimes stress is not the problem. So she, should talk to her primary care physician just to, make sure that everything is okay. And if the issue is not stress and it's something else, then you would definitely want to see your doctor for that. But sometimes the issue is stress and people just don't realize that. Because, like I said, they're looking at these symptoms in isolation. Stress can show up in a variety of ways, like the chest aches, difficulty concentrating, decreased creativity, difficulty sleeping, muscle or joint pain, just a wide variety of things. And 75 to 90% of doctors' visits are actually related to stress, which is why, the diabetes that you may have or the heart issues that you may have, like if you actually trace that further back down the line, stress may have been the actual catalyst for that. So that's the first thing I want to say. Just really pay attention to those physical symptoms, and also understanding that stress can manifest physically in the body in a variety of ways. It's not just feeling overwhelmed. Sometimes it can actually be those physical things like the chest aches, and then in terms of some of the other tips, I would definitely suggest, in general, completing the stress response cycle. So, this is something that, like you said, is really applicable to any human being, not even specifically women. It's based on how we are wired as human beings. There's something called the stress response cycle. So, it starts with, you being in a state of homeostasis or, everything is normal. Then you experience a stressor, which is something like for this mom, it could be the homeschooling. It could be the working from home. It could be juggling whatever else she's juggling. The things that actually cause the hormonal levels to change in the body. So the stressor occurs, which then triggers the body to go into a stress response. And that is either fight, flight, or freeze. And all of that is natural. Having a stress response is what keeps us safe. So you don't necessarily want to turn that off, but you do want to be able to complete the cycle. So you go from everything being fine to experiencing a stressor to the stress response. And then from there, after the situation goes away, or maybe the husband comes home and she gets a little relief, she still has to complete that stress response cycle. The body doesn't understand that, okay, he's home and now I can relax, because stress is a biological phenomenon. You have to respond in a way that the body actually understands, something that's going to trigger a chemical reaction in the body. And there are a variety of ways to do that. Mindfulness is a really big one that a lot of people use, and that's very easy to do no matter where you are or how much time you have. Another one, believe it or not, is crying. Not saying that everyone should cry, force yourself to cry, but there's a reason why you feel better oftentimes after you cry. It's that you have completed that stress response cycle, and the body is like, okay, if she's comfortable enough to cry, then like we're safe now. So I can go ahead and take a step back, get things, recalibrated, and we can get back to normal. Laughter is another one. Again, another reason why people tend to feel really good after spending quality time with loved ones who make them laugh or friends who make them laugh. It's because that tells the body that, okay, we're safe. So we can go back to that relaxed state. And what happens when you don't complete that stress response cycle is that those cortisol levels, among other hormones, stay very elevated, and you just continue to build and build and build. Like I said, the stress response is very healthy. Having that cortisol released when you are stressed is healthy, but having it in excess or for an extended period of time can become very toxic for the body. And that's when you start to get that can manifest into decreased immune function
Mhm.
or increased blood cholesterol, some of those health problems that people kind of see as these standalone things that are actually related to stress. So yeah, that would be my advice to her, would be to be sure to complete that stress response cycle at least once a day.
Wow, that's good. So there's an entire cycle that you can go through to
Mhm.
kind of, well, first of all, deal with it at that moment, or some tips for dealing with it at that moment. And then
Mhm.
something to remember when the situation hits again,
Right.
because it's going to hit again.
Mhm.
And I know, I'm sure in your experience that that it sometimes takes a little while for people to be able to get a grip on this and
Mhm.
to be able to know to put those techniques in place each time.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
that's good. That's really, really good. Wow. Kayla Elise, this has been great. I tell you what, we're going to come right back. We're going to take a quick break. Our sponsor is going to tell us something, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up with Kayla Elise. I think I have one more scenario for her. So don't go anywhere. Listen out. We'll be right back.
Podcast episode is brought to you by Gem Jolise. Gem Jolise, bringing you fine handcrafted, one of a kind jewelry designs. The owners are a mother daughter team who share a love of jewelry and a flair for design. Known for their unique pieces made of natural gemstones and metals, their designs are sure to put a smile on your face and bring joy to your heart. For more information and or inquiries about purchasing your custom creation, please feel free to send them an email at gemjolise@gmail.com. Visit their website at gemjolise.com and to stay up to date on their latest designs, like and follow them on Facebook and Instagram at Gem Jolise. Father's Day is swiftly approaching, and the ladies at Gem Jolise are designing with the men in mind. Father's Day gifts will be on their social media pages later this week. Be sure to place your orders in time for the special men in your life.
So proud. Okay. Sorry, looks like we were frozen there for a minute. I'm glad that we're back up. So, Kayla, coming back, first of all, thank you so much, Gem Jolise. And they gave you information on where you can reach them and take a look at some of their products as they gear up for Father's Day. So, please, again, Gem Jolise. You can find them here on Facebook as well as on Instagram and at gemjolise.com. Gem, JOLEASE.com. So, getting back to one more scenario here, Caleb. This is okay. This is, it looks like a single person who is working full time, taking classes in the evening, has a relatively long commute and a stressful job, struggles to find downtime, um, and recently has been put on blood pressure meds. Okay. So, what advice would you have? We don't have an age here or anything, but the person is single. It looks like she's not married, no children that I hear of either, and has had some blood pressure issues, stressful job, long commute, and is just having trouble finding downtime. Um, what are your suggestions?
Mhm. So the first thing that kind of jumped out to me, just to use as an example of why you need to be really aware of what's going on and kind of tracking certain things so that you know what is causing what, is the blood pressure medication. Obviously, that
Mhm,
means that she has a blood pressure issue.
mhm,
And that could be a variety of things, right? It could be a genetic issue where she might be doing everything right and, have all of the other variables in the right places, so to speak. But because this is in her family lineage, she has blood pressure issues. Another possibility is that this blood pressure issue is related to stress. And more than likely, she was experiencing some other symptoms of stress prior to having to be put on these blood pressure meds. So again, just an example of the need to be aware of kind of what's going on and kind of knowing how to put those puzzle pieces together, or even being aware of the fact that there might be puzzle pieces that can give you a bigger picture of what might actually be going on. So for this person, I honestly would say, like, for everyone, kind of the same as scenario one, and I'll kind of expound on this a little bit in terms of the need to complete the stress response cycle. I really cannot stress, no pun intended. I really cannot stress enough how important that is for our bodies, because again, you want to be able to speak the language that your body actually understands. That's the reason why when you take a luxurious bath, or you drink a glass of wine, or you go get a manicure and a pedicure, like, those are relaxation techniques that make you feel better in that moment. But there's a reason why you get back home, or you get back to whatever you're supposed to be doing in your day to day, and you still feel the same way that you did before that. The body doesn't understand that going to get a manicure means that you're not stressed, or you're no longer in that stressful situation. So again, I would definitely suggest that she focus on completing that stress response cycle. I did say previously at least once a day. I think that is like bare minimum for everyone, but ideally you'd be able to do it multiple times per day. The way to kind of keep it, empty, so to speak. So if you think about your body as a bathtub and stress as dripping water from the faucet, ideally, in order to keep the bathtub empty, every time the water drips into the faucet, you want to be able to pull the drain and release that water. You don't want to let the tub get halfway full and then pull a drain that's enough to let out maybe a glass full of water. You want to be releasing as quickly as things are coming in. And that's kind of the same for the hormonal levels and kind of completing that stress response cycle. You want to be able to complete it ideally as often as you actually experience the stress or encounter stressors. Obviously, we all live very busy lives, and this person seems to also live a very busy life. But that is kind of the goal. If you can't, if you could take it a step above, one time a day, but you can't necessarily do every single time you encounter a stressor. Another thing that I would suggest would be to bookend your day. This person does take classes in the evening and has a relatively long commute. So I get that likely when they get home, they may just want to shower, eat, and go to sleep. But I would highly encourage that you bookend the day, meaning that regardless of what happens during your day, in the morning, you do something to kind of prime your body and to release anything that was kind of pent up from the previous day. Complete that stress response cycle in the morning by doing something that actually relieves the stress, and then do that again when you go to bed. Just, like I said, if all else fails, at least do it at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. The other thing I would say to her or him, I don't know if we had a gender, would be, and I don't know, it says working full time. I don't know if this person is self-employed or works for someone else. If they do work for someone else, I would highly suggest that you talk to your employer. And I know that I am probably kind of a contrarian in this. I have no shame. I mean, way back when I was kind of in my crisis, I mentioned that I went and talked to the powers that be, because I've just never really thought twice about doing what I need to do. I understand that that can be scary for some people, but I would suggest that you kind of bring up some of your concerns to your employer. If they really value you and the work that you do, they want you to be healthy enough to do it. So I would talk to the powers that be about what you're feeling and see what resources are available to you in your full-time job. I know that there are EAPs available, some places that you work, and they may be able to pay for, a variety of different resources for you. Yeah, that would be my suggestion. I think that would be a good start.
And that's great. That's great. I like that whole bookend your day. I like that. I like that a
Mhm.
lot. And that faucet analogy was good too. I'm a big analogy person. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Wow, those are really, really been good tips. And I know I just gave you two scenarios. We didn't even get into stress brought on by relationships, stress brought on by environments.
Mhm.
I know there's so many other things that stress touches.
Mhm.
And so, literally, I want to tell our listening audience today that we condensed this. It was definitely just about a half an hour we've had here, maybe a little more than a half an hour, um, and that was just the beginning of it. But I would also say that, first of all, if you have trouble dealing with life, period, and I'm sure that Kayla Elease would agree with me. If you have trouble dealing with life, period, there is absolutely no shame, absolutely no problem in actually getting professional help to help you deal with those stressful situations. Am I
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
That you're unable to handle on your own. So that's a whole other realm that we could talk about here. But we've given you just a few things to help you to know how to recognize that you're dealing with stress. Our scenarios, I mean, these are people who have already started to feel physical effects from it. So do some of these things, take heed. And then, Kayla, are there any resources that you can recommend for us that people may want to tap into as well?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend. I'm a big reader. I read a lot. So the first things that come to mind for me are books. The first one is called Burnout, and it's by Emily and, man, what is her name? It starts with an A, the Nagoski sisters. If you just search
Mhm.
Burnout and Nagoski, Nagoski, it'll come out. That's a fantastic book to really help you to better understand burnout, which is kind of the extension of stress, like the far,
Mhm.
far
Mhm.
bad end of stress,
Mhm.
as well as the stress response cycle. Another book would be Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert Sapolsky. It is a very um, scientific book. It's very dense, so it might take you some time to get through, but it's also very helpful in kind of linking stress to a variety of different health ailments and kind of helping you to see exactly how health is related to, how stress is related to aging, and stress is related to mental health, and stress is related to your immune function, and all of these different kind of caveats and nuances of that. And just quickly going back to the burnout book, there are also resources in there too. It's not just it's not just a teaching resource. Is actually one that you can use. They give examples of things that you can do in real time. And then the third and final resource I would share isn't really anything, a specific app, but I would recommend a meditation app if you are interested in kind of getting into the habit of completing this stress response cycle on a regular basis, but you don't really have time to learn how to do something new or to implement some of the things that may take a little bit more time. I would suggest a mindfulness app like Calm, Insight Timer, Smiling Mind. Those are the ones that are coming to mind right now. But my point in recommending a mindfulness app is that, like I think I said earlier, there are a variety of mindfulness practices that exist out there. And you can, in these apps, they often have them categorized by how much time you have. So if you only have 1 minute and you need a quick guided meditation, again, something you don't have to learn how to do and you just have to listen to what they say and follow along, I would suggest that. Or even if you want a longer one, They have those as well. And it's also the apps are a really nice resource to help you as you grow, because you could use the same app for when you're just starting and you're, doing the 1 minute meditation all the way up to, a 25-minute guided meditation, then maybe even a 30-minute long meditation that isn't guided. So it's a nice resource that I think everyone should kind of have in their back pocket for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, I have to admit, the mindfulness app is one that I definitely use, and it's part of my evening routine between having lavender.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I will do white noise. Sometimes it just helps to hear absolutely nothing. That just the white noise is enough
Mm-hmm.
to start to bring calm to the end of your day. Wow. Well, I promised that I would not keep us longer than a half an hour, and I've already gone a little over. So we're going to have to go ahead and end. Kayla Elease, thank you so, so much. This has been awesome. And again, tune in next week as she goes more into where her niche is. We're going to go ahead and have her to talk more about, what she does in the principalship arena, which is where her specific practice is for stress management. And also, I wanted to make sure to have you to tell us where we can get in touch with you. Tell us any programs that you have coming up, any programs that are existing, and just give us any information you want us to know about how we can connect with you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. We are a little bit long and it's my fault because I was talking a lot, but I would definitely say I do have a couple things potentially coming up that I cannot or should not announce just yet. But I will be sharing those on my social media outlets when the time is right. If you're interested in working with me, if you are a woman in school principalship who's interested in working with me, I do have a coaching program called Lead with Longevity. You can visit my website or any social media platforms and send me a message. My website is KaylaElease.com, spelled exactly like how you see it on the screen. And then on social media, I am on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, all at I am Kayla Elease. So if you plug in any of those platforms, facebook.com/I am Kayla Elease, LinkedIn.com/I am Kayla Elease, so on and so forth. That's my handle across all platforms.
Awesome. And you gave me something to show here. And of course, I am having trouble showing it. I hope maybe you guys can see it now, but this is actually, I don't know. Can you see that, Kayla?
Yep, I can see it.
All right. I'm a little technology challenged. I say it all the time, but this is her information, how to stay in touch with her. And again, her social media handle is there, as well as her website. Kayla, again, it has truly, truly been a pleasure having you here today. We're going to continue some more. We'll have some more information coming up in the recorded podcast that you'll be able to catch next week. So for now, thank you for being here. I'm excited. It's season 2. Just one quick thing about some things that I have coming up. One is a book launch, actually, a party that is coming up this week for Women Crushing Mediocrity, where I am a co-author in the book, and I would love for you to participate and also help us to reach #1 bestseller on Amazon. I'll be giving you all that information on social media this week. But for now, we're going to sign off. It's been great. Thank you so much again, Kayla. And thank you out there listening to us for being with us here today. All right. Have a good one.
Oh, that was phenomenal.
Welcome to Leveling Up the Podcast with Alethia Tucker.